As the howling ends is where the snarling begins. Of course, we are talking about the 2018 horror comedy, The Snarling. This is a British werewolf comedy along the lines of what Shaun of the Dead did for zombies, this does for werewolves. This one is written and directed by Pablo Raybould, and is a low-budget British movie, like I've said, and it focuses on this film crew that are actually making a zombie movie out in the kind of the wilderness in the West Midlands of England somewhere. However, this movie set is beset by problems. As it appears, there seems to be something lurking in the woods that is killing both crew members and kind of locals alike, and it could in fact be a lycanthrope, a werewolf, a beast crawling around in the undergrowth. Now, it's up to a trio of dippy friends from the local pub, maybe to put the end of it, as one of these friends, Les, actually looks like the spitting image of the zombie movie's real main star, and actually has to kind of get entwined in the production because the main star is out of action. So, like I said, horror comedy, don't be expecting anything too serious here. Let's talk what works. Oh my god, this film was hilarious. Now, comedy is subjective. Let's get it out of the way first of all. And I find a lot of kind of like, you know, comedy hybrids somewhat kind of tiresome, and even straight comedies. But this was exactly my sort of humour. This was a legitimately funny film with some fantastically written one-liners, some very clever editing, and some hilarious performances. I thought the humour in this was, for the most part, absolutely spot on, and it's very British. Now, if you're watching this outside of the UK, this actually comes out in the UK on the 5th of November by Left Films. The humour is very British, but I guess, you know, if you like things like Shaun of the Dead, then you kind of may get it here. But the humour is kind of very much on a kind of a British sense of humour, and it's actually a little bit un-PC at times. I was kind of surprised here about how maybe some of the risque use of language is here, considering it's 2018. But, you know, that's how people speak in some circles, so I won't hold it against it. So, yeah, the actual comedy is, I would say, for the most part works. There are some really funny lines here. This also has a lot of homages to other horror films, in particular, of course, werewolf movies, and obviously the most obvious one here is going to be American Werewolf in London, of which there are multiple kind of like recreations and homages and kind of tips of the hat and everything like that, from, you know, the two hitchhikers in the kind of the moors with their kind of puffy jackets on, to the name of the pub, all sorts of stuff basically. So it's absolutely fun. I actually thought the characters here were, for the most part, they kind of acted like exaggerated real people. So yeah, it's a comedy movie, and some of the kind of humour goes a little bit OTT, but I actually kind of quite like the kind of, it sounds weird saying it in this film, but the kind of like, just the sometimes quite funny dialogue that people really do have when they kind of go to the pub and they're sitting in the bar and they're talking to their friends and they're just chatting jive basically, and it's exaggerated, and one of the kind of the main character, Les, is dumbed down to the point of being like an amoeba, but, you know, it's kind of somewhat realistic dialogue that you might have with your friends when you kind of go out and have a few drinks. So I actually thought it was really, you know, really kind of clever. And the humour kind of works throughout the movie, I've got to say. Like I've said, it's adjectives. Some people may find it funny. I actually thought this was a shining star of British horror comedy. Not all the jokes land, and in particular ones of me were some of the ones with the police. There are some good jokes with the police, but there are a few where there's a particular character that maybe gets a little bit grating and maybe a little bit too OTT at times. And I thought where the main actor here, Laurence Saunders, he plays both Les, who's our kind of unlikely hero, and also the kind of the main character in the movie within a movie. When he's that sort of when he's playing the actor, again, his performance was a little bit OTT. I would have liked to have maybe just dialed it down just a bit, so you kind of you're not really looking at it as a spoof, and more of it just kind of a straight kind of horror comedy. And I do feel sometimes it just kind of veers into kind of like spoof territory, but whilst the rest of it is played more like a kind of a straight kind of horror comedy, if that makes sense. The horror is quite light. You do see a kind of a werewolf, but it is really kind of not revealed until kind of the end. There is a kind of you know, obviously who is the werewolf kind of plot here, kind of like along the lines of, I guess, something like Silver Bullet, and obviously the werewolf is kind of revealed at the end. And whilst the man in the suit kind of costume looks a little cheap, they actually don't kind of focus on the costume too much, and you don't see kind of any too lingering shots, obviously, to kind of try and kind of hide the fact that it is obviously a fairly kind of cheap looking suit. Ironically, they're actually making a zombie film in the movie, and there's some actually fairly good zombie makeup effects here, despite the fact that that's only the movie within the movie. So that was quite fun. There's a little bit of kind of CGI blood, which I thought was a little bit kind of unnecessary. But there is, you know, even though I wouldn't say this movie's particularly horrific, there are some kind of quite nice scenes that are shot kind of in the kind of the woods at night that do look kind of suitably eerie. Although this is a film which is never going to be a particularly scary film for anyone, but it's still an enjoyable film. Like I said, the humour is subjective. I actually found this movie an absolute riot. I really enjoyed the kind of the clever wordplay and the kind of the you know, substituting words for something else and stuff like that. I find that kind of humour absolutely hilarious, but it's not going to be for everyone. I appreciate that, but for me, this was actually a really enjoyable horror comedy that I actually, you know, I'll actually love watching again, to be quite honest with you, despite the fact that it is low budget films. But I love low budget films, so there you go. So this one definitely gets a recommendation for me. If you like Shaun of the Dead and you don't mind watching a lower budget movie, then this is right up your alley, because it really does. I mean, it's definitely influenced by Edgar Wright. I would say less so Shaun of the Dead, more spaced. So if you've seen the series Spaced, it kind of reminds me of that more so than Shaun of the Dead, but I guess more people have seen Shaun of the Dead, and obviously it deals with a kind of a supernatural thing as well. So that is the best sort of comparison I can make here. But I love this film. I actually thought this was brilliant, and I was expecting a kind of a, you know, trashy, low budget, you know, straight to DVD werewolf flick with no imagination. And oh boy, I was wrong. This movie has got plenty of imagination and was so funny. My God, it is so funny. So, I want to know, is this me? Is this my sense of humour? Does anyone else thought the jokes landed pretty badly? Let me know, leave me comments. I'm going to give this movie, let's go high. I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. Loved it. Great movie. Laughed my ass off. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.